Chemical attacks were waged on Syrians last week or earlier this week, and the debate rages on as to who took out these attacks. Over 1,000 people were killed. I've read statistics that at least a third of them were children. And the debate is whether or not it was the rebels, the Syrian rebels, or whether or not it was Assad and the Syrian government. So I've been confused by this a lot recently, and so I just took a few minutes and tried to cobble together as much information as I could, and I'm trying to be really unbiased with this. So I'm going to go through a little bit with you. BBC News had a headline. This is a little bit old, but it's relevant. It says Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula was formed in January 2009 by a merger between two regional offshoots of the international Islamist militant network in Yemen and Saudi Arabia. And the reason I'm bringing this up is because the allegations from the alternative media, or the conspiracy theorists, if you will, is that the rebels are backed by the CIA via Al-Qaeda, and of course those conspiracy theorists are concerned about 9/11 because out of the 9/11 Commission report, you know, a lot of the information, all the financials went back to Saudi Arabia, and we've yet to go to war with them. So it says in this article, the U.S. President's counterterrorism advisor has called it, quote, the most active operational franchise of Al-Qaeda beyond Pakistan and Afghanistan. It goes on, led by a former aide to Osama bin Laden. The group has vowed to attack oil facilities, foreigners, and security forces as it seeks to topple the Saudi monarchy and Yemeni government, establishing the Islamic Caliphate. And then it goes on and says that, you know, that they've claimed responsibility for a ton of stuff. So that's setting up Al-Qaeda, this article, in Saudi Arabia. Okay, so then I try to connect, you know, is Al-Qaeda really linked to Syria? And I found an article, Bloomberg Newsweek, and it was dated August 30th, today. Al-Qaeda links clouds Syria as U.S. seeks clarity on rebels. And it's basically saying that the rebels are setting out for the northeast region of Syria. There's a quote here, and it's not saying who this is by, but basically 2 years into the civil war is where we're at. There's Sunni Islamists, radical Islamists, and they're the prevalent force that are trying to topple Assad. So apparently if we're backing the rebels, then now we're backing radical Islamists. And that seems ironic since radical Islamists were the ones that supposedly knocked down the Twin Towers. It says their influence is among the biggest challenges facing the U.S. and allies such as Saudi Arabia. So, okay, now we're allied with Saudi Arabia. So we've set up Al-Qaeda in Saudi Arabia. Al-Qaeda was unquestionably involved in the 9/11 attacks. Now, who funded them and what their motives were is a question for the conspiracy theorists, but we're setting this up. So now we're allies of Saudi Arabia, and we're allies with the rebels. So here's a quote. It says, two of the most powerful insurgent factions in Syria are Al-Qaeda factions. Evan Coleman, here we go, senior partner at Flashpoint Partners in New York, said by telephone. He continued, even were the Assad regime to fail, and there be some kind of takeover by rebels, there's no clear understanding that everyone here will be able to agree and form any kind of government. So we back the rebels, who is supposedly run by radical Muslims. I don't know if you saw the video of the rebel cutting out a man's heart and eating it, but that was a rebel. So that's obviously a radical Muslim because he claimed his allegiance to Allah right before he took the bite out of the heart of the human that he murdered. So, you know, that's a big disconnect to me, and I want to be unbiased, but you all know that I'm not. So there's a little bit of that article. And here recently, just some more stuff that's going on. This is from Reuters. Obama authorizes secret support for Syrian rebels. This was a year ago, August 1st of 2012, and it said President Barack Obama has signed a secret order authorizing U.S. support for rebels seeking to depose Syrian President Bashar al-Assad and his government, sources familiar with the matter said. So it goes on to talk about the nerve center of where they're basically setting up, I would call it a base. I don't know what the military term is. They're using the word nerve center here. And it says, quote, this nerve center is in Adana, the city in southern Turkey, 60 miles from the border. A U.S. air base is near there, and that's where U.S. military and intelligence agencies maintain a presence. So we've got our presence over there near Syria. Then it goes on and talks about a relation with Turkey, and then it says, European government sources said wealthy families in Saudi Arabia and Qatar were providing significant financing to the rebels. So once again, here's another source. The financing is coming from Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia is the home to Al-Qaeda. Al-Qaeda is in Syria. They are the rebels. We are backing the rebels. I don't know how to be. It's very clear. So on the one hand, we've got troops still in Afghanistan to this day fighting because of 9/11, fighting for our freedoms. And then on the other hand, we've got action pending in Syria. This article goes on and says, on Tuesday, NBC News reported that the Free Syrian Army had obtained nearly 24 surface-to-air missiles, weapons that could be used against Assad. Later on, one of those people said, no, we didn't get that. But basically, this article is saying that there's money coming from the United States going to the rebels. So the question, of course, going back to, are they the ones that did the chemical attack, or was it Assad? And I'm going to get to my reasoning as to why I personally don't think it was Assad in a moment. But this article continues, you know, indications are that U.S. agencies have not been involved in providing weapons to them because Obama would have to approve a supplement known as a Memorandum of Notification to his initial broad intelligence finding. And it would have to be signed by Obama to authorize clandestine operations to support rebels. So if there's support going in specifically for weapons, it should, if legal processes were being followed, have been public. But then it goes on and says the State Department on Wednesday said the U.S. government has set aside a total of $25 million for non-lethal assistance to the Syrian opposition. So they're saying it was mostly for communications and radios. Of course, once someone gets the money, you don't know where the money's going. Okay? The State Department says they set aside another $64 million for humanitarian assistance. So they want to make sure that the radical Islamists are being well fed, even though this worldwide caliphate that is established in Saudi Arabia hates us for our freedom and was responsible for 9/11, and our troops are in Afghanistan to destroy them. So we have a major disconnect. We have a schizophrenic government, it seems, because guess what? We're in Afghanistan, and we're supporting the rebels. So I apologize to all of you troops out there for that, and we do thank you for your service, but please email me if you have anything that you want to say. I'll get your word out. So that's enough of that article. Yay. Wonderful. Now we've got, that was sarcasm, a recent New York Times piece. Obama and Kerry press the case for U.S. action in Syria. So here they are. After the previous year of supporting the rebels, now we want action. They talked about the evidence and the intelligence that is overwhelmingly saying that it was Assad that did the chemical attack. But to me, Assad must be a complete idiot, because apparently, according to this article, and I'm sure you've heard this before, Obama drew a red line last year, and he made it very public, that said that if chemical weapons were used, it would, quote, change his calculus about America's involvement in the Civil War. So Assad had to have heard that. So I guess he wants America, the strongest military force in the world, along with Britain, to come on over because he went ahead and did the chemical attack. And one of their main arguments for why Assad and his government performed the attacks is that they had some sort of a meeting a few days prior on the subject of chemical attacks. But that doesn't mean that they did it. They could have received intelligence that the rebels were about to do it, and they could have had a safety briefing, and the rebels could have picked up on that because it was public what the meeting was about. So that could just fall into the framing of the Assad government if that is the case. Okay. So Pentagon officials, according to this New York Times article, have moved warships and other assets closer to Syria in preparation for an attack which would most likely involve the use of cruise missiles. Defense Secretary Hagel said the military is ready to execute any order by Obama. There's a quote here, of course, going along with our schizophrenic government, that the president understands that we're weary after the war in Afghanistan. How can he talk about Afghanistan and Syria in the same, anyway. But he said that the United States should be sending a message to the world, and if they didn't do anything, it would be sending the wrong message. He said, and I quote, "It's important for us to recognize that when over 1,000 people are killed, including hundreds of innocent children, through the use of a weapon that 98 or 99% of humanity says should not be used even in war, and there's no action, we're sending a signal." So he doesn't want to send the wrong message. But of course, I don't understand why that would make it okay for us to send cruise missiles to Syria that are notorious for killing innocent civilians as a way to right the wrong of killing innocent civilians. So I know they're supposed to be smart bombs, and that's the terminology that we used in Iraq, but I think, you know, you can Google the statistics on innocent civilians that have been killed in Iraq. So also in this article, Obama, the administration said, quote, "We're not considering any open-ended commitments." So that to me means they're considering a commitment, just not an open-ended one. It also says, "We're not considering any boots-on-the-ground approach." Mr. Obama told reporters that he's not made any decisions about what he's going to do. But later on in this article, it does say, you know, like I mentioned before, that they're ready for an attack, which would most likely be cruise missiles. So, two wrongs making a right, I suppose. I've got a couple of videos I'm going to put the links to also below. One entitled USA Working with Al-Qaeda Against the Syrian Government. I'm going to put a link to a Story Week article. Anthony Gucciardi is one of my new favorite journalists. It says, "Yes, we can. Obama funding Syrian rebels beheading Christians and using child soldiers." This is the same rebel that was eating the heart of a human. I'm going to try to find that link and put that below as well. And so the Bloomberg Business Week article, you know, just to recant, connects up Al-Qaeda with Syria, so with the rebels, of course. And then there's Assad's action since the gas attack. I have an article here from Reuters. Syrian envoy alleges rebel gas attack, demands UN investigate. So they're saying, please, UN, investigate this. It was the rebels. This is dated August 28th. And it says here, Syria asked the UN on Wednesday to order chemical experts in Damascus to investigate 3 rebel attacks in which Syrian troops, quote, inhaled poisonous gas. So this is the Syrian government troops that are also getting attacked, while Britain pushed for the Security Council to act on the crisis. But the article continues, the United States dismissed the appeal by Syria's UN envoy, saying it refused chemical experts access to Syria to investigate allegations that this gas had been used repeatedly in the civil war. The UN had, it says in this article, received at least 14 reports of chemical weapons use in Syria. So here we have Assad, who knew that Obama had set a clear line, that if chemical weapons were used, then we would go to war. Most powerful government in the world, and with our Britain as an ally, you know, and Turkey, it seems, and all kinds. But he decided to use them anyway, is the argument that is being put forth by our intelligence. And then on top of that, he asked the UN to investigate. I don't know, if I murdered someone, I wouldn't ask the police to investigate it. That's just me. You know, but he could be insane. I mean, it's a possibility. We live in a world full of absolutely insane people. And USA Today, another article, and it says, Syrian government warned the U.S. that any military action against Damascus would set the Middle East ablaze. So apparently they accused the rebels of doing it and warned the U.S. don't launch any actions because it would have repercussions. So this is not good. And I just want to point out again the irony of the fact that we have so many troops in Afghanistan. Supposedly they're going to be pulled out by July of 2014, and some rumors that I've heard, having some military folks in my family, are that they may get pulled out sooner. They're basically in a breakdown situation right now in Afghanistan. They're even getting into some arguments with the president of Afghanistan because he's actually starting to tax them on their imports and exports. So it's funny, the American government wants them to have this democracy and be independent, and then we get upset with them when they start taxing us. I think it's a sign of independence. So it seems like because of those kind of issues that we're going to be pulling out. But can you imagine the heart and mind of a troop that has been on perhaps 9 rounds to Afghanistan or Iraq and Afghanistan, and now they're turning around and getting deployed to Syria to back Al-Qaeda? I feel for them, and I just wanted to put this information out there for you because it's been really confusing to me for the last year at least, and I got this information. I'm going to put the links below. Please don't forget to subscribe to my channel and check out my music page, heatherdavis.com. I sing about politics and conspiracy theories also, and I do occasional political things like this. I hope that you have a wonderful day. This has been me looking out for you, and let me know if you agree or disagree, or if you have anything to add.